hear trumpets.
Well, Tim, just so you know, big music, big day, inaugural, on the air, live and in living color.
Mm-hmm.
We have Links and Libations Radio.
I have a quote for you,
good.
Randy. This is your quote.
Okay.
What we're doing here, it's not an original idea. The Scots and Irish have been doing this for, 500 years?
Exactly.
Links and Libations.
Yes.
We've been playing this great game of golf for 500 years, and wine, they've been making wine and beers. That's how the pyramids were built, because
Really?
they're going to get their beer at the end of the day.
They just
Thousands of years, and you just thought of this recently.
I did. It took a lot. It took a lot of research, sir.
50 years in the biz, you finally wake up.
Well, the Chinese, they make mead, and they've been doing that for 9,000 years. You didn't see it, the time about 2,000 years ago, it wasn't wine that was served. It was wine that was served at the last meal. It wasn't beer. They didn't have a distillery. They had wine around. So, yes, here's where we're at.
Here we are.
And we have sitting in the middle with us, we have a guest today, which...
Imagine that.
Are you protected? Are you protected, Tim?
I have lots of them protected.
You should get protection.
If not, I got this guy here.
Yeah, this is Randy Krantz, specializing in the industry of insurance for the small craft industry, along with many other things. So welcome, Randy, to our show. Well, coming back to you, young Tim,
yes.
For the informational 9-minute segment they're going to have here with Randy. And
right.
Hopefully he stayed around, which is always good. I mean, he's in that now. We won that, so he stayed. Yeah. So anyway, what I'm fascinated by is that, I've been in a lot of distillery, breweries, wineries over the past 3 or 4 years. I've talked to probably over 500 distillery, winery, brewery owners. Traveled from Maui to... I'm going to get into that. The one that we had, I think you'd find interesting. The most interesting interview was down in Key West. Paul Minta had the first legal rum distillery down in Key West.
Oh, that's right. I remember that trip you took.
The guy is a very interesting guy, and we're sitting there on the floor.
No, he's real interesting.
Yeah, he is extremely interesting. He's got a shaman. That's
what I'm talking about.
Ships food through his restaurant to the masters under lock and key in a private jet. He ships food to people that work in Google in Virginia. He had the record for kite boarding from Miami to Havana. But he also had this distillery that he said, this floor could explode at any moment because we're sitting at sea level and the tide comes up and it goes down and it comes up and it goes down. And why I would go to that, because it was true. He said the pressure underneath. I thought, well, I wonder how you would insure that.
Oh, and that's why Randy's here.
But Randy wants to do the Midwest first. So anyway, you have some pretty interesting specific targeted areas. I mean, some of your packages that you and I were talking about on the phone. What's the highlight reel of that? What are some of the things you can insure that people wouldn't typically think about?
Well, some of the things that are unique to the craft beverage industry are tanks and barrels and those kinds of things. And, sometimes people forget to close the valve or tighten it all the way, so there's tank leakage. Or, if you have a whole tank of wine and it goes down the drain, you're going to be pretty unhappy if that's just money out the window.
The machine is insured, but not the content of the machine.
Correct. The other thing that you can do is you can add an endorsement for manufacturer's selling price. So if you have something in process and it needs to be aged, if it's a distillery and it's 3 years through a 6-year process and it's destroyed in a fire, we can add an endorsement that would give the manufacturer's selling price and sort of ensure the profit of that product.
Wow. That'd be important if you had a loan somewhere, or you'd be working with bankers and doing inventory and
absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything that can ensure, a distiller, puts it in the barrel and maybe the formula didn't go well and he just didn't mix it right? Is there anything that's in that liability, or is that up to him in terms of his mixology?
Well, there is a contamination and adulteration coverage. Mm-hmm. So if something got in there unexpectedly, or an ingredient was bad and they didn't know about it, and the product didn't turn out, or it was deemed to be contaminated, there is coverage. It's not full limits, but you can usually buy up to $500,000 of coverage for contamination or adulteration, they would call it.
That is just fascinating. I had no idea that would be those type of things. It seems like it'd be more of a risk, just be out there on your own.
Right. Randy Krantz with Neckerman Insurance Services in good old Madison, Wisconsin, joins us this morning on Links and Libations Radio. Now, what about the similarities and differences between microbrews, craft breweries, and the wineries?
Well, they all have a product and general liability exposure and property, but the microbrews, it's a much shorter process. So, typically they can brew beer in a matter of a couple of days versus wineries, depending upon the product. If it's a red and needs to be aged in oak barrels or whatever, it may be several years before it's ready to go. So they have different needs from that standpoint, but there's also a lot of similarities. They all have property. They all have general liability. They might have commercial auto, those kinds of things. But, I guess the time frame of bringing from the product, start to finish is much different.
So one of the things that you specialize in that I'm impressed with the way that you want to and you do your business, you want to have boots on the ground. You want to go meet the people. You want to talk with the people. You want to grow with the people, and you want to be there, beginning, middle, and end as they go and grow and as they have issues and needs. And that's why you're fascinated, because you become sort of a specialist in this. I mean, the companies you work with are some of the leading companies.
That is correct. We have several carriers that have specialty programs for distilleries, wineries, and craft brewers. And, one of the things you mentioned, Tim, on the how a brewery is different than maybe a distillery. They can process water and add the minerals and pH and stuff to sort of mimic water from anywhere in the country, and that is going to have a big difference on the end product. So if that water was destroyed during process or before it got used, they can go ahead and actually have specialty coverage for that water.
I did not know that.
I just learned. I talked to somebody.
Karen, are you writing all this down?
Yeah, because when we started our distillery, the Links and Libations distillery here in Lake Geneva,
yes,
get all these formulas down for us.
Yes. I'm doing it right now.
But I was talking with somebody actually just 2 days ago, and they were talking about this able to format, different areas of the country with their different formulas, and that's land of sky blue waters to the rushing waters from Colorado. I mean, that's pretty interesting.
Don't knock that hams now.
Don't be knocking that hams. My favorite commercial. When I was a kid.
Randy, speaking of the Midwest and lakes and bears, you're a Badger fan, homegrown in Wisconsin, family man. Your history in the industry, where did all this come from?
Sure. I started in the industry right out of college. I worked for MetLife for a couple years, decided I liked insurance, had an opportunity to go into the family agency at Neckerman, and I've been there for 28 plus years. And I was mentored both by my father-in-law and his brother, Dick Anderson, who sort of took me under his wing when I unexpectedly lost my father-in-law at a fairly young age. And I sort of had to jump in with both feet and really learn the business quickly. And I've done that. I've also pursued additional designations in insurance, a certified insurance counselor designation, which is a 5-part series and an annual update every year.
Wow.
That is a lot of work. I'm going to tell you, it's a lot of high ethical standard in this particular industry.
Absolutely.
And when Randy says something, people, the word you can't. They typically in the insurance industry. I was in it for 22 years, and the leader of our company said, rarely does the insured ever read the policy. They got to rely on the agency, right?
You are correct. It's we give a piece of paper and a promise, and I'll tell you what, that you mentioned before about boots on the ground. I don't know how you can really insure a business, a manufacturing business, a product processing business without going to their location, seeing what the exposures are, and really analyzing it to make sure that you're covering all the exposures or at least offering to cover them. They may choose to self-insure, but at least they're making an educated decision.
And one of the things we're doing, and again, I am the president and a host and executive publisher of our magazine, Links and Libations. We made a decision in terms of the ethic of our business.
Yes, sir.
And when we go and we have on executive directors around the Midwest, we want to make sure the people that we're dealing with we're bringing in as advertisers and sponsors. And one of the things I was impressed with I met him at a meeting. He went to a meeting of an association in Wisconsin, And he was there, introducing himself, and you do the research and you go online and so forth. And getting to know him, we're going to be giving the introduction through Links and Libations.
Absolutely.
And we're going to be calling up the executive director. In fact, we have one coming on, Paul Tonacci, one of the largest. He has 1,500 downline people. And we wanted to have the ability to give the introduction to you, Randy, as we take you forward into these markets and help you grow. But we also want to make sure, because I know the companies you represent, and they're really, really good companies. So we're not, be one of our major sponsors. But being a sponsor with us, we have to wrap our arms around you the way you wrap your arms around your clients.
Thanks for the kind words, Randy. I appreciate that. And you're right. You really need to get to know your customers and treat them like you'd want to be treated if you were the purchaser.
Right.
And, they're paying good money to transfer that risk to an insurance carrier. And you are the steward of that risk and those premium dollars to get the best value for them, depending upon what their needs are.
Yeah, without question.
Well, we appreciate your time this morning on Links and Libations, and enjoy your time up in Lake, Wisconsin with your beautiful family.
Thank you, Tim. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the summer months and getting out on the water and getting out to visit some of the local wineries and distilleries as well.
I think the next time we come on, we're going to talk about winery insurance.
Okay.
And that's going to be because sometimes if those people are in, they're doing things out and they're spraying things around. Just touch on that for a minute. Do they have any hazards that they have to worry about?
They absolutely do. Typically they may be putting some sort of pesticide on to keep the critters away, and there's drift coverage so that if those things drift by a gust of wind comes and gets on your neighbor's fruit crop or something, it may not end well.
I always struggled with that, Randy. Remember they were sharing that with us? They struggled for decades with, because of all the row crops, everything in the air.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating working with you. I think we're going to have segments here on Links Libations. We're going to wrap this up for today, but we're going to have you back on and timely, probably every 2 to 3 weeks, and share the stories, the claims, the people we've talked with, and begin unfolding it through the Midwest and then on through the United States. Anyway, Randy, we really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy, for being here. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Kara. And we'll be back on Links Libations Radio.